What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into in the world of volleyball, such as, how about that week in NCAA women's volleyball in week 4? We had 5-setters, we had upsets, we had barn burners all over the place. We had 2 nationally televised teams go 5 yesterday, 2 nationally televised matches go 5, which featured 4 top 5 teams altogether. And the best part is, we got plenty more NCAA women's volleyball to go, as this week kicks off conference week. Also, the Durango Fall Classic is this weekend, as Durango High School will be hosting the annual girls volleyball tournament, which is sure to draw in a lot of competition from all over the nation. Also, the First Point Collegiate Challenge has announced the teams that will be participating in the annual challenge, which will be held in Austin, Texas. So hand me a volleyball, set the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 212 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be live without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow them on formerly known as Twitter, X, TikTok, and Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And also, please do follow IE Sports Radio on Facebook if you still use it. All you just have to do is type in the word IE, then Sports, then Radio, in the search bar, like us, and then boom. That's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, which has the daily sports news, which is always updated, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our pages dedicated to each podcast, such as this one, Set Point, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and our merchandise shop. For the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. I also have to give a shout out to Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky is gluten-free options, no MSG, no sodium nitrate, low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. And all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Once again, huge shout out to them for being our sponsor as Planet Jerky, the jerky that is on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow Set Point on Instagram is follow me on follow me personally on Twitter at Teran Rodriguez 1, which you probably don't want to follow me just because for the time being, I haven't really posted anything too much about volleyball. But follow me on X, or follow Set Point on X at set_point.ie, and follow Set Point on Instagram at set_point.iesr. Don't worry, I'm planning to get my Instagram game going, and I'm going to hopefully keep it going. Alright, now let's get on into the NCAA women's volleyball action. So week 4 did not disappoint, as we had a lot of big-time matches. We even had a few close calls. So we'll start on Tuesday. We had Florida versus Florida State. Now, I actually thought this was going to be a sneaky good matchup. I thought at first Florida State was, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but I didn't think Florida State was going to really put up the greatest match. But little did I know, this is a rivalry match, and when it comes to rivalry matches or in-state rivalry matches, all bets are off. And Florida State came out swinging, as this was actually held at Florida State, as it was held in Tallahassee, or the Tully Gymnasium. As Florida State came out swinging, they took the first set 25-18, but Florida responded by taking set 2 25-22 in close fashion. But the Seminoles took the third set 25-23, or the Noles as most people like to call them. Then set 4, the Gators took that one 25-17. Then set 5, Florida got out to a hot start. They jumped out to an early lead, but Florida State eventually caught up. They actually took the lead at 10-9, but eventually Florida kind of got a leg up on them. Eventually it was 14-14 as it had to be decided in extra points. But unfortunately for Florida State, Florida ended the match with 2 straight points, and they wound up winning. So it was a valiant effort from Florida State, but unfortunately the Gators had a little bit more bite in them, as Florida outblocked Florida State 10-6. They barely got outdug by Florida State, as Florida State outdug them 50-49. Florida was led by Kennedy Martin, who had 25 kills. She hit 383. AC Fitzpatrick had 22 kills. She hit 404. And Sophia Victoria added 10 kills. Ellie McKissock and Trinity Adams each had 10 digs for Florida, as the Gators hit 276. Florida State was surprisingly efficient offensively. They hit 303, as they had 4 different players in double digits in kills, as they were led by Audrey Koenig and Corey Lewis, who each had 14 kills. Audrey Rothman and Kiari Roby each had 10 kills. So it was an efficient night for the Noles, as Lewis even hit 571, Koenig hit 382, Rothman, well, she didn't really hit the highest percentage, but still solid. She only hit 231, and Roby hit 250. Florida State ran a 6-2 offense, as Angelija Draskovic had 28 assists, while Kenna Phelan added 18 assists, which is quite fascinating. Draskovic added 14 digs, while Kylene Fili Mawa added 11 digs, and Audrey Rothman added 10 digs. Unfortunately, it was not enough, as unfortunately for the Noles, they sadly just could not pull out the win, as It's Drewski pops into the chat room. Larry B popped into the chat room saying week 4. Well, week 4 is gone. Now we're on to week 5. We're on to the next one, as my boy Marcus Losgreat would say. Speaking of Marcus Losgreat, he is in the chat room. He says, "Oh snap, Marcus Losgreat has come back to Set Point. It's been far too long, brother." Yeah, it has been far too long. And It's Drewski pops in the chat room. He says, "Tuned in, deliver that fire volleyball contact." Tuned in, let me start that again. Tuned in, deliver that fire volleyball content. Have a great show, Teran. Thank you. Thank you to the live chat room. I appreciate it. All right, but that's that matchup. That was only the tip of the iceberg on Tuesday. This was the true matchup on Tuesday. Number 4, Nebraska taking on number 5, Stanford. Now, in the past, Stanford has always gotten the better of the Huskers. But this time, it was well different, as this actually took place in Maples Pavilion. So the first set, the Huskers barely took that first set, 25-23, and they carried that over to that second set, as they took it 25-16. So, surprisingly, Stanford was down 2-0, and it's been a while since Nebraska has beaten Stanford, especially in the regular season. Then in set 3, Stanford woke up, and they took that third set 25-19, but the Huskers eventually turned the tide and took that fourth set 25-21, as they wound up winning on ESPN2, as this match was televised on ESPN2, and there were 3,363 in attendance. Now, that's not really that much, considering this is a big-time matchup between the number 3 and number 4 and number 5 team. You're going to see that number is not that big. So Nebraska was led by Merritt Beeson, the Florida transfer, who had 15 kills, while Harper Murray, the freshman phenom, added 12 kills. Lexi Rodriguez added 12 digs, as Nebraska as a whole hit 333. Stanford was led by Katie Baird, who had 15 kills, and I think someone spelt Katie's last Katie's first name wrong. I think, isn't it with like 2 T's? I digress. And anyway, Kendall Kipp also had 12 kills, which is kind of fascinating to see. That's kind of interesting because normally Kipp is the one leading the way because of that 6'5" frame of hers, but unfortunately it was Katie Baird's show. I think Nebraska knew that Kendall Kipp was the big time hitter, so Stanford also knew that, and they had to go to Katie Baird. Something that was quite phenomenal was that Nebraska played such outstanding defense in set 4. They held Stanford to less than 100 hitting percentage in that fourth set. They held them to only They held Stanford to only 91 as a hitting percentage, and Stanford had 8 hitting errors and only 11 kills. Like, Nebraska was all over the place in terms of digging the ball. It didn't show in their numbers, but they really held Stanford in check offensively. So that was a big win for Nebraska. Big road win as well, because Stanford always seems to get the better of Nebraska, but I was just downright impressed with the Huskers and how they were able to play such phenomenal defense and how they were able to basically shut down Stanford altogether. So now we jump on over to Thursday, and there were some notable matches. There's quite a bit of notable matches Thursday, Friday, and I think one on Saturday, and then Sunday was the coup de grace. So this one actually comes from Iowa as UC Santa Barbara upset number 23 Iowa State as Iowa State took the first set 25-20, and I was thinking, okay, this is going to be probably the most expected matchup that's going to be happening between Santa Barbara and Iowa State. But the Gauchos took that second set 25-20. And after that first set, Santa Barbara never trailed, which was quite fascinating. Now, they never trailed, but there were ties. That fourth set had 4 ties. Third set only had 1 tie as the Gauchos took that third set 25-18. And then Santa Barbara never trailed, and there were no ties in set 4 as they took that fourth set 25-20, earning the upset over Santa Barbara. Now, Santa Barbara's actually had themselves a sneaky good season. They even beat Utah the previous weekend, which beating Utah at Utah is no easy feat. Yes, the Utes are a little down this year, but I will say that is a huge win for the Santa Barbara Gauchos, as Michelle Owobite led the way with 19 kills, while Tasia Farmer added 9 kills. Santa Barbara hit 318, and they outdug Iowa State 59-56. Santa Barbara barely outblocked Iowa State 7-6, and even though they had more service errors, they barely outdid them in service aces, out-acing them 8-6. Iowa State was led by Nayeli Gonzalez, who had 14 kills, Maya Duckworth, 12 kills, and Jordan Hopp, not Hoppy, Hopp, had 11 kills. In terms of digs, Brianna McKnight had 20 digs for the Gauchos. McCall Peed had 14 digs, and for Iowa State, their dig leaders included Morgan Brandt, 15 digs, Brooke Stonestreet, 14 digs, and Nayeli Gonzalez, 11 digs. Now, unfortunately for Santa Barbara, they wound up losing to Drake, not the rapper, the volleyball team. They wound up losing to Drake, I think, the following day, which was a big letdown. So, yeah, I'm just going to say, and the sad thing was, I was basically saying the Big West Conference is looking nice. Well, that aged like milk, sadly. As Adam Clark pops in the chat room, he says, "Hello, Teran." He just wrapped up his show, Chi-Town Weekly. So, great show, Adam, as always. And happy 150th episode of Chi-Town Weekly. Also on Thursday, we had number 7 Oregon taking on number 8 Pitt at the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Oregon took the first 2 sets, 26-24 and 25-17. And Oregon was looking really good. But then the Panthers woke up and took the third and fourth set, 25-18 and 25-20. Then the fifth set was very all over the place. It looked like Oregon was going to run away with it early on. But then Pitt woke up, and then it was just back and forth action. And eventually the Ducks wound up taking that fifth set, 15-13. I think Pitt led 13-12 in set 5 and then conceded the final 3 points. But Oregon's a very good team. There's a reason why they only have 1 loss. And they have some quality wins like against not Minnesota, Ohio State, Hawaii, which is not an easy place to win at. So you got to give it up to Oregon. They were led by Morgan Lewis and Mimi Collier, who each had 19 kills. Gabby Gonzalez had 10 kills. Oregon, as a team, did get outdug by Pitt, 68-59. And it looks like, they outblocked Pitt 14-11, as Oregon barely outhit Pitt 227-220, as Pitt was led by Olivia Babcock and Tori Stafford, who each had 16 kills, while Valeria Vasquez Gomez added 12 kills, and Emma Monks added 7 kills. Pitt was kind of a little on the young side when their two freshmen, Tori Stafford and Olivia Babcock, were leading them in kills. But it just goes to show that Pitt is able to hang with them because they've got the horses, or Panthers, to basically keep up. I will say this, the attendance was a little low to my taste. I know it's a Thursday, but 2,168 in attendance? And there could have been a whole lot more than that for a top 5 or top 10 matchup. But I digress. It's a Thursday. You still got your Friday and whatnot, so who am I to judge? Then on Friday, speaking of which, we had number 19 Ohio State taking on Baylor. Now, Baylor, before this one, they actually lost to Washington State in 4 sets. Baylor took the first set, but conceded the last 3 sets. But that's okay. Washington State is good, as I'll be getting into that a little bit later. Baylor won the first 2 sets, 25-22 and 25-19, before the Buckeyes took sets 3 and 4, 25-18 and 25-23. Fortunately for Baylor, they had just enough in the tank as they took that 5th set with force, 15-8, as they held Ohio State to only 200. They only held them to just 6 kills in that set, which is good for them. And also Baylor hit 647 in that 5th set, which is very good. Baylor was led by Elise McGee, who had 19 kills. Kendall Stowers had 16 kills, and Manuela Bibimbe added 12 kills with a 647 hitting percentage. Even though she had that hitting percentage, Baylor hit 248, as Lauren Briseno had 18 digs to lead the defensive front. Baylor outdug Ohio State 57-54, as Baylor outblocked Ohio State 11-4 as a team altogether, which is not going to win you a whole lot of matches. Ohio State was led by Emily Londot, who had 23 kills, though she had 13 hitting errors. And then Lauren Murphy added 11 kills. So, and I guess I should mention that Riley Rader added 8 kills. But she had hit only 69, which is less than 10%. So, unfortunately for Ohio State, they just did not have that it fact. They just could not keep up with Baylor. The fact that they fell behind 0-2 but almost won via reverse sweep was quite impressive. But unfortunately, when your big hitter is Emily Londot and she's practically having to carry you all the rest of the way, it's going to be tough to win because Ohio State just does not have that team from last year and the previous year. Ohio State is nowhere near the team from last year. Let's just get that out of the way. Ohio State, in terms of digs, was led by Londot, who had 14 digs. Caitlin Hoffman had 12 digs, and Lauren Murphy added 11 digs to go along with those 11 kills. So, a good win for Baylor and a solid effort from Ohio State, which wound up losing to Texas the day before, the same day that Baylor wound up losing to Washington State, which, again, I'll be getting into that in a little bit. Right now, let's go to this little upset. We had USC, the little gutty Trojans, pulling off an upset on the road against number 17 Purdue. That was a big win for the Trojans, just because USC has been lacking a standout win. Going into this week, their standout win, or going into week 4, their standout win was against San Diego, which is nowhere near the team that they were from last year when they made it all the way to the Final Four. So USC took a wild first set, 30-28, but then Purdue kind of slapped them back to reality by taking set 2, 25-15. Then third set, USC took it 25-23, and then set 4, 14 ties. It could have gone either way in that set, but the Trojans, or Women of Troy, eventually came out with that fourth set 25-23, earning their first ranked win of the season, and just in time, too. The day before, they actually outlasted Illinois in 5 sets, so this kind of goes to show that USC does have a little spunk in them, and then for Purdue, they're still just going to have to work a little harder, just because I would have thought that SC would not have survived against Purdue, especially on the road. And keep in mind, this is going to be their future conference opponents because USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon are heading from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten next year. As SC was led by Skylar Fields, who had 17 kills. Tyra Ariel had 15 kills, and she hit 778, which is darn right impressive. Fields also hit 323. Now this girl, remember this girl's name, London Wijay. If I'm mispronouncing that last name, I apologize. London Wijay had 18 kills. Now, the funny thing is that she's actually supposed to still be playing her final year in high school at Alemany in, I don't remember the location, somewhere in the LA area, but I think it's like in Woodland Hills or something. But London Wijay, who's not even old enough to vote, had 18 kills. I think USC has kind of found their next big hitter, and they found their future. So, very impressive stuff from London Wijay, and having to step up. And she also chipped in 12 digs as well as Gala Trubint and Skylar Fields. As a team, USC hit 333, and they outdug Purdue 61-58. And they were barely outblocked by 3, but it's all good. And USC also missed 16 serves, but that's how USC is. They're supposed to serve tough. Purdue, on the other hand, they were led by Eva Hudson and Chloe Chacon. I hear it's pronounced Chacon and not Chacoin. If it's pronounced Chacoin, just let me know. But if I'm pronouncing it correct this time around, I'm happy about myself. Anyway, Eva Hudson and Chloe Chacon each had 17 kills, while both hitting 300 or better. Raven Colvin added 9 kills, as she hit 316, and Lourdes Myers had 7 kills, hitting over 417. Purdue actually hit 300, but unfortunately for them, it just was not enough, as USC just squeaked out with that win before having to go to a 5th set, which, again, it's probably SC's biggest win of the season. And for them to get 2 wins, I mean, Illinois is not really the easiest opponent, but for them to grind out a win over Illinois is darn right impressive. So USC might be peaking at the right time, but this week is kind of going to be a tricky one, as they've got UCLA on Wednesday. But that will be saved for later. All right, now let's get on into the thicker of the upsets. So we had Georgia versus Georgia Tech at McCamish Pavilion at the campus of Georgia Tech. Now, I thought this was going to be a sneaky good matchup just because Georgia versus Georgia Tech is always a fun little matchup, and it's an in-state rivalry. You can't go wrong with that. And if I recall correctly, Georgia actually beat Georgia Tech last year. That was actually the case this year, as Tech took the first set 25-21, but then the Bulldogs took the second set 28-26, and then Georgia took the third set 25-21, and eventually took the fourth set 25-21, completing the upset and posting their biggest win of the season. Very impressive win for the Bulldogs, as they were led by Sophie Fisher, who had 13 kills. Estelle Haugen and Casey Evans each had 11 kills, while Tori Harper had 9 kills. As a team, Georgia only hit 132, but they hit better than Georgia Tech, as Tech hit 122. Tech was led by Tamara Oteen, who had 13 kills, but she had 10 hitting errors, which I hate to bring that up, but it's the truth. That is a statistic. Larissa Mendez also had 12 kills. The most efficient hitter on Georgia Tech was Afedo Manyang, who had 7 kills, no hitting errors on 7 swings. Bianca Bertolino had 8 kills, but she had 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 54 on 37 swings. As a team, Georgia outblocked Georgia Tech 15-9, and they barely outdug Tech 64-62. Georgia won the service ace battle 9-4 against Tech, as both teams also missed 15 serves. So all in all for Georgia, this was their biggest win. However, it was followed up with a 4-set loss to San Diego, which eventually lost to Georgia Tech. So That's rough for the Bulldogs. They could have used a lot of momentum going into SEC play, because SEC play is going to be big time. All right, now jumping back over to the Lone Star State, we have number 11 Washington State taking on number 6 Texas. Now, I knew this was going to be a very good matchup, but I did not know Washington State really had it in them, as Texas took the first set 25-21, and then the Cougars of Washington State took that second set 25-22. All the sets were close. They were decided by less than 5 points. Set 3 was won by Washington State 25-22, and eventually the Cougars won set 4 25-22, completing the upset over Texas, and they won the Texas two-step, having beaten Baylor yesterday or the day before in 4 sets. And they also won the Big 12 trifecta, as they beat Texas on last Friday, Baylor last Thursday, and BYU the previous week. So that's what I call the Big 12 trifecta. So Washington State passed the eye test with flying colors in this week. And I only wish I hadn't given them Team of the Week the previous week. If I had known they were going to pull this upset, I would have given it to them, no doubt. But I don't like giving repeats. I think there's more variety and whatnot, so I'm sorry to Washington State. I wish I could have given you Team of the Week, but that honor goes to someone else. Anyway, Washington State was led by Iman Isanovich, who had 13 kills. If I mispronounced that last name, just let me know. Magda Jelarova had 12 kills. She had 391, while Pia Timmer and Katie Ryan had 11 kills apiece. Washington State hit 226, but they held Texas to 166, as they got outdug 61-57. And this was a straight-up block party at the Gregory Gymnasium, as Texas actually outblocked Washington State 17-16. There were so many blocks. As Texas was led by Jenna Wenas, who had 16 kills, while Maddie Skinner added 14 kills. Asia O'Neal, surprisingly, she did not have the big night I kind of was expecting, but she did have a lot of blocks. What Asia O'Neal lacked offensively, she made for up defensively. She had 12 block assists and 1 solo stuff, as Asia O'Neal also had 5 kills, and Bella Bergmark added 7 kills. Like I said, Texas only hit 166, and if you see the numbers in terms of the kill leaders, Texas only had 2 players crack double digits in terms of kills, while Washington State had 4 different players crack double digits in kills. So Washington State is really looking good, and they really need to make a statement if they want to get into the top 10, which they definitely passed that test with flying colors. So Washington State, I even said this, they're a top 10 team in the AVCA coaches poll. There's no debate about it. They are for real. Don't even try to argue. And watch out, Pac-12. There's a reason why Washington State was chosen to finish second in the Pac-12. And I gotta give it up to Jen Greeny. She's really doing a great job with that program. And I'm hoping that could open up the floodgates for more recruits to come. And winning at Gregory Gymnasium is not easy. I mean, yes, we had Stanford beating Texas, but Stanford was coming off of that 1-1 weekend where they lost to Long Beach State. So, and Stanford is just as good as Texas, if not better. As Mikey Two Guns pops in the chat room, he says, "What's up, T-Money?" Hey, Mikey. And It's Drewski says, "Shake my head at Central Texas teams." Oh, yes. I guess I should mention this in regards to the Big 12, is that TCU actually had themselves a pretty darn good weekend as well, as they actually beat Hawaii and Florida State, and they also beat Western Carolina? Either way, they won the Fight in the Fort tournament, as they went 3-0, and beating Hawaii is no easy feat. That is a very good team, and for TCU to win that match is very impressive. And Florida State is also up there, but then again, Florida State has been up and down. Like, I think they kind of got the lowest of the lows following that 5-set loss to Florida, but still, Dallas, Texas teams have had Florida State's number. So I'm sorry to all the Florida State fans. And don't get me wrong, I like Chris Poole. He's a great guy, and he's one of 8 coaches to have over 900 wins in Division I women's volleyball. But unfortunately, I just don't think he has the horses to contend with everybody, especially in the ACC. Jumping over to Saturday's matches, we had number 14 Creighton taking on number 9 Minnesota in the the Diet Coke Classic. I almost said the Pepsi Classic, but it's the Diet Coke Classic. Now, if you remember last year, Minnesota lost its first match in the Diet Coke Classic since, I want to say, in the mid-2000s. I think it was over 100 matches since Minnesota lost a match in the Diet Coke Classic. And they lost to Pepperdine last year. History unfortunately repeated itself for the Golden Gophers, as Creighton took the first set 25-15, but Minnesota took that second set 25-16. The Jays responded by taking set 3 25-20, only to see the Gophers respond by taking set 4 25-22. Then in set 5, Creighton really kicked it into high gear as they took that fifth set 15-9, and they pulled off probably a remarkable win as they knocked off Minnesota in the Diet Coke Classic. And they eventually wound up winning the Diet Coke Classic as they knocked off High Point in straight sets while Minnesota beat them in 4 sets. Regardless, Creighton won the Diet Coke Classic because they're Creighton. Carson pops into the chat room. He says, "Great show, Teran." Thank you, my man. As Creighton was led by Ava Martin, who had 22 kills, still without Nora Sis. Now, I don't know the whereabouts of Nora Sis. I heard it was a lower body injury, but not having Nora Sis is kind of worrisome. But if this is Creighton without Nora Sis, Creighton with Nora Sis is going to be pretty big time. And I think losing Nora Sis to injury is bringing Creighton so much more closer, because more times than not, it would be Creighton just saying, Nora Sis lead the way, Nora Sis lead the way, Nora Sis lead the way. Well, Nora Sis is injured, and they now have to have someone else leading the way. Ava Martin has really done a great job. Yes, she did have 11 hitting errors, but still, Ava Martin is the left-hand girl to Nora Sis. Destin Indom Simpson, I don't know if that's Destiny, if the Y was cut off in the box score, but Destin Indom Simpson chipped in 12 kills, while Kiana Schmidt added 10 kills, as Creighton hit 227. And Mikey Two Guns asked what teams participated in the Diet Coke Challenge. Minnesota, Creighton, and High Point. Those were the teams. Minnesota was led by Lydia Grote, who had 20 kills. She was the only player in double digits in terms of Minnesota, which is kind of a problem. Taylor Landfair had 9 kills, which I expected a lot better. I'm 95% certain she was the Big Ten Player of the Year last year, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, but I kind of expected more from her. She also had 7 hitting errors, which, even though Minnesota won the blocking battle, Creighton had 9 blocks to Minnesota's 10 as a team. The interesting thing is that Minnesota also won the service ace battle, adding 11 aces to Creighton's 7, while Creighton had fewer service errors by 4. Now, Creighton winning the dig battle was huge. They had 77 digs to Minnesota's 69, as Ellie Bolton had 20 digs, while Kendra Waite was the one that led them in digs with 22, while Ava Martin added 11 digs, and Sydney Brasinger had 10 digs. Minnesota only hit 177, which is not going to win you a whole lot of matches. Minnesota also had 4 different players with double-digit digs, as Kylie Murr had 14 digs, Lydia Grote added 13 digs, Melanie Schaffmaster 11 digs to go along with her 30 assists, and Taylor Landfair added 10 digs, even though she was kind of slacking in the offensive department. But Creighton just showed that they are indeed a pretty solid team. Everyone is saying that they're a little bit low just because they lost to Duke. I think they're kind of over the Duke loss. I think Creighton is going to do damage at the Big East Conference. My only thing is, if they can get Nora Sis back, that team will be much better than expected. They'll probably be as better as they were in this match. I'm just saying. Alright, now we got to jump to Sunday's matches. And this was the coup de grace. So we have to start with Stanford-Louisville. This was nationally televised on ESPN2, and I haven't gotten the final numbers from that match and the next match that I'm about to discuss. But this one, oh my goodness, this was a barn burn. There were 9,761 in attendance. By the way, there were a lot of attendance records broken, as I need to get into that in a little bit. However, let's just recap Stanford-Louisville. So, first set, Louisville took the first set 25-22, and they took the second set 25-20. And I was going back and forth with watching this and watching the NFL, but honestly, I had to watch the NCAA women's volleyball on ESPN2, even though I was at my job and I had to use my phone to watch. But it's all good. I still contributed because that's how I am. Anyway, so Stanford woke up and they emphatically took the third set 25-14, and they took care of business in set 4, taking it 25-20. This one went 5 after Stanford was down 0-2. Where have we seen this before? Last year against USC. I attended that match. Yes, I was a little late, but I attended that match when Stanford took on USC at the Galen Center. Stanford went down 0-2, tight third set, took it, tight fourth set, looked like SC was going to win it. Kendall Kipps put the team on her back, scored the last 3 points, took that fourth set, and then just routed SC in that fifth set. That was what I was thinking about. I was really thinking, is this going to be like the USC match from last year at Galen? Well, it kind of was, but it kind of was. It kind of was, but kind of wasn't. Early on, it was tight between USC and Stanford and Louisville, as Stanford led 8-7 at the side switch, but Louisville tied it up at 8-8, only to see Stanford go on a 4-0 run and lead 12-8. They eventually took the fifth set 15-12, as both teams' liberos were fantastic. Alina Ogilvie, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as Paul Sunderland was the one that was on the call for this one. Alina Ogilvie, and for Louisville's libero, Elena Scott, they combined for 42 digs, as Ogilvie had 23 digs, while Scott had 19. And my favorite phrase from Paul Sunderland was that it's a bit serving the libero from either team was a huge mistake. And I even had to jokingly tweet that out on Twitter. It's safe to say when you serve the Louisville libero and the Stanford libero, it's a big mistake, because that's what Paul Sunderland kept saying on the call. He said, and serving that libero is a big mistake. So you got to go back and hear the call on that one to believe it. Anyway, so Katie Baird led the way with 23 kills, and I guess her name is spelt with one T. I've always known for her to have 2 T's in her name, but I digress. She had 23 kills. Kendall Kipp had 18 kills, while Aaliyah Rubin had 16 kills. Now, Aaliyah Rubin's having herself a solid sophomore season, and everyone expects Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird to be the two-headed monster. Nope, you got Aaliyah Rubin to basically contend with. And Sammy Francis also chipped in 8 kills as Stanford hit 329. They got progressively better as the match went on, as they started off hitting 182, then 206, then 464, and then after one set 3 hit, they never hit below 400, which is darn right impressive. Louisville was kind of the opposite, as they had 5 different players in double digits in kills, as every player that got a kill actually wound up being in double digits, which is awesome. Anna Beer led the way with 17 kills. Charity Looper had 12 kills, while PK Kong, Kara Kreese, and Aiko Jones each had 10 kills. That's pretty balanced if you ask me. But, unfortunately, you're facing Stanford. If they were facing any other team, not named like Wisconsin or Florida, maybe Nebraska, I think maybe Louisville takes that one easy, especially when you're playing at the KFC Yum Center. Unfortunately for Louisville, they suffered their first loss at the hands of the Cardinal, as Louisville hit 235. They started off really strong, hitting 287, then they hit 387, then 364. Then they hit 0 in set 3, then 167 in set 4, and then 190 in set 5. Basically, after set number 2, Louisville hit under 200, which isn't going to win you any matches, especially when you're playing Stanford. And then lastly, we have Wisconsin versus Florida. Now, this was a roller coaster ride. I don't know if there are script writers to this volleyball match, but honestly, they did a good job with this one. So, the first set, I missed watching the first set after I just watched Louisville and Stanford, because that match went 5 sets, and then Wisconsin-Florida was playing on ESPN, as I had to basically had to switch on my phone from Louisville, Stanford to Wisconsin, Florida. But we didn't miss much in set 1, as Florida just dominated and took that first set 25-15. Now, the second set, this second set was so sad and so disappointing, partially, as Alexis Stuckey actually went down with a leg injury. And now, Alexis Stuckey is an All-American setter, and for Florida to lose her, that gymnasium, the Exatech Arena, or the Swamp as I call it, in Gainesville, Florida, just went silent when Alexis Stuckey went down. You couldn't hear a pin drop when you heard Alexis Stuckey on the ground in pain. And that was a huge loss for her. Losing Alexis Stuckey, I think, maybe changed I wouldn't say the outcome, but it changed the mindset, as taking over for the setter position for Florida was Kennedy Muff, who was very serviceable, and she definitely got the job done. Back to the set. Despite losing Alexis Stuckey for the rest of the match, Florida took that second set 25-22, and they had number 1 Wisconsin on upset alert. But Wisconsin, being the very talented and resilient team that they are, they took that third set 25-21, and eventually Wisconsin took that fourth set 25-22. And the fifth set, that was just as good as the Stanford-Louisville fifth set, as Florida went up 8-7 at the side change, and they eventually went up 10-8, and it looked like it was going to be over for Wisconsin, but Wisconsin rattled off 5 straight points to go up 13-10, and they led 14-11 and had 2 match points. Eventually, I think it was AC Fitzpatrick. She got the kill from I think the right side to eventually keep Florida alive. And then and then Wisconsin called their final timeout. And then there was a serve. I forget who served the ball, but it looked like it was going to go out. But Wisconsin thought that it was going to be in, and unfortunately there was miscommunication, and it was a service ace. So suddenly it was Wisconsin only up 14-13, and I'm thinking, oh man, this could be very dicey. But fortunately for Wisconsin, they have a 6'9" player in Anna Smrek, who just put down the final ball, at least to my knowledge, as Wisconsin took the fifth set 15-13, completing the reverse sweep and staying undefeated while handing Florida their first loss of the season. It was a shame one team had to lose, just because Florida losing Alexis Stuckey really hurt them. Now, it didn't hurt them in the match, as Kennedy Huff really adapted well to the offense, and it's kind of like when you lose a quarterback in football. You have to have that backup come in. As Wisconsin was led by said Anna Smrek, who had 16 kills, she is playing more right side as opposed to playing in the middle, which I think for Kelly Sheffield, you need to have her playing all 6 rotations instead of playing just half, not the full 6 rotations. But Anna Smrek had 16 kills. She had 343. Sarah Franklin added 13 kills, while Devin Robinson added 10 kills. I think it was either Franklin or Smrek that put down the final ball. Regardless, it was from the right side, and then that was how Wisconsin wound up winning and staying undefeated. They only hit 199, as both teams were deadlocked in terms of blocks, 8-8, while Florida outdug Wisconsin 75-70. Florida, on the other hand, was led by Kennedy Martin, who had 13 kills, while AC Fitzpatrick and Nettie Okamore each had 11 kills. Anna Dixon and Sophia Victoria chipped in 9 kills apiece, but unfortunately it was not enough. Though Florida did win the ace battle 7-4, it still wasn't enough. Now, would they have won with Alexis Stuckey? That is debatable right there. I feel maybe they could have won with Alexis Stuckey, but honestly, Kennedy Huff was very serviceable. Mikey Two Guns in the chat room says, do you think the injury will keep her out long? Well, leg injuries are so tricky to basically look at. We haven't gotten word on if this injury is going to keep her out long term. I hope that is not the case, knock on wood, but I will say leg injuries, I'm hoping it's nothing more than a sprain and she's out just like a few weeks, especially with SEC play starting up this week. And the SEC is looking really good and nice, especially with the likes of Arkansas and what's their face, Tennessee on the rise. Kentucky, even though they have played a very tough schedule with them getting swept by Louisville and losing in 4 to Nebraska, they've played a tough schedule, and I still see them as a top 25 team. However, they're going to have to really kick it up this week in SEC play. And Mikey asks, who's the tallest women's volleyball player you've covered? Well, I think it would have to be Kari Geisberger from LMU or Julia San Giacomo from Santa Clara. Both were 6'5". So there was that right there. And I think Kendall Kipp might be 6'6". Because I remember back in her high school days, she was like 6'4", 6'5". But now she might be 6'6". It all depends on if she's having a good tall day or not. Anyway, but that was that for that week right there. I mentioned Kentucky. Like I said, they lost to Nebraska in 4, which is not surprising. I mean, they took a set off them, and there was an amazing rally which lasted 1 minute and 11 seconds. But Nebraska wound up winning that rally, and they eventually wound up winning the set. Now, if Kentucky wins that rally, do they win that set and push it to 5? Maybe. Winning a rally more often than not is always a momentum booster in a match, especially when it's like so fast paced. So there was that right there. I do need to go over some notable numbers, as the same day that I covered a high school girls volleyball match was the same day that Louisville and Kentucky faced one another, and they actually set a new attendance record for the Louisville women's volleyball program, as the attendance record for Louisville, Kentucky was a whopping 12,760. Now you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, that's a lot, right? Well, it gets better. So also that same day, Wisconsin played Marquette at the Fiserv Center, and there was a whopping 17,037 people in attendance, which is actually the most in a regular season event in terms of women's volleyball. So that is very, very good. And also BYU's women's volleyball team saw their attendance record for women's volleyball be broken, as they had 5,528 broken, or they had 5,528 in attendance in their match against Utah, which, that's the holy war right there. Of course, they're going to get a big crowd when it comes to that matchup. And then also a notable win on Thursday was Pepperdine it was Friday, where Pepperdine swept Washington, which was very impressive. Washington was receiving votes, while Pepperdine needed a big breakout win before starting off West Coast Conference play. And they do have a legit shot at winning the West Coast Conference. San Diego is down. LMU, I think LMU could still do damage. Like, LMU and Pepperdine definitely have a legit shot. And then UCLA and Oklahoma split their matchups. Oklahoma won the first matchup in 5 sets, while UCLA wound up winning the next matchup in 4 sets. And Long Beach State probably had Long Beach State had the longest set of the weekend, as they wound up beating New Mexico 35-33 in a 4th set, which eventually was wound up won by Long Beach State, which went 3-0 that entire weekend in Tucson, Arizona, as they actually swept Arizona on Thursday, which was their first Pac-12 sweep since, I want to say it was like 2001. It was still a very impressive sweep regardless, as them sweeping Arizona is no easy feat. So it was just darn right impressive, and it was posted on the Instagram account of Long Beach State Women's Volleyball, but not posted on the Twitter account, which is maybe it's because they didn't want to flex or anything, but what can you do? And actually, it was the first confirmation right here. It was Long Beach State's first road sweep over a Pac-12 opponent in 31 years. The last time that had happened was 1992, when I wasn't even born, when they swept USC. So Long Beach State has been making waves. They beat a Big Ten opponent for the first time in 8 seasons, which that opponent was actually Rutgers. They swept a Pac-12 opponent, albeit Arizona isn't on the level of Stanford, Oregon, Washington State, you name it. But that's still impressive to sweep Arizona at Arizona. That's not an easy place to win at. So there's that right there. And like I said, Long Beach State went 3-0, and that New Mexico State win is pretty impressive. I knew New Mexico State was going to give Long Beach State a battle, and Long Beach State answered the bell after dropping a very close third set. And winning that fourth set must have been excruciating. It must have been stressful for Tyler Hildebrand, as Long Beach State kicks off Big West Conference play on Friday against Cal Poly, which I might be in attendance. But enough about that. There are some other notes and notables. Now, I did not make note of this last week in the AVCA Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll, but Arkansas was ranked number 16 in the Coaches Poll. The last time Arkansas was ranked 16th or higher was before any of the current Arkansas women's volleyball players were born. So the fact that that is a thing right there shows that Arkansas is growing, and they could be a pretty special team in the SEC. And then Washington State is ranked in the top 10, which I'm about to get into the AVCA Women's Volleyball / TeraFlex Coaches Poll momentarily, as I just spoiled it. I partially spoiled it, which is my fault, and I'm sorry, but it's all good. So, to the AVCA Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll we go, as no one dropped out, but there was still some movement, as 25 is actually tied with Iowa State and Western Kentucky. Yes, Western Kentucky is back in the top 25, while Auburn is 24, Dayton is 23, Kentucky is 22, and Ohio State is 21. 20 through 16 consists of Houston at 20, Purdue at 19, Baylor at 18, Kansas at 17, and Arkansas at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Penn State at 15, Tennessee at 14, Georgia Tech at 13, Minnesota at 12, and Creighton at 11. 10 through 6 consists of BYU at 10, Texas at 9, Pitt at 8, Washington State at 7, and Oregon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Louisville at 5, Stanford at 4, Florida at 3, Nebraska at 2, and you're still number 1 team in the AVCA Women's Volleyball / TeraFlex Coaches Poll is Wisconsin. So again, no new teams popped up. Washington State has climbed into the top 10, which they were the highest riser of the week after their big win over Texas on the road. Western Kentucky is back in the top 25, I'm surprised Iowa State is still in the top 25, but I guess Santa Barbara losing to Drake really hurt them in terms of seeing Iowa State drop out. But it's all good. It's still pretty impressive for Santa Barbara. I really think Santa Barbara could still be something in the Big West Conference. No, Boston College is not ranked, Mikey Two Guns. And he says, do you have a favorite volleyball match that you've watched over the years? I have too many, in my honest opinion. I'll probably save that for maybe the 4-year anniversary special. So save your questions for the mailbag for the 4-year anniversary special of Set Point when it first went on. So I'm just saying for you, Mikey. Just save your questions for then. So that is going to do it for the AVCA Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll for September 18th. So I was going to actually preview the Durango tournament, as the Durango Fall Classic is this weekend, going to be held in Nevada at Durango High School and various other schools. However, the pools aren't up. The pools aren't posted yet. How am I supposed to preview this whole weekend when there's no pools posted? I'm on the Durango Fall Classic website right now. Yeah, there's no pools posted. Oh, that makes me so mad. That makes me so frustrated and sad. But I guess there are some notable... I guess I'll go over some of the notable teams that are participating. Archbishop Mitty, Assumption from Louisville, Kentucky. Archbishop Mitty is from San Jose, California. Alemany, the same one from that lost London Wood J to USC. Bishop Gorman. Cathedral Catholic, last year's everything champion and last year's tournament champion. Cornerstone Christian, the one that was runner-up to Miracosta in the Ann Kang tournament. Harvard Westlake's kind of dropped off ever since Natalie Morgan flew the coop and went to Long Beach State. But Harvard Westlake can be a sneaky good team. Huntington Beach High School is a notable team, and that is the team that is coached by former Set Point guest Craig Pizzanti. Now, I got to see them last Tuesday against Santa Margarita, and they pulled off a barn burner over Santa Margarita in 5 sets. And they also beat Los Alamitos in league, which Los Alamitos is coached by also friend of the show and former Set Point guest Dave Huber. If you all were seeing my updates on Twitter, other than the NCAA women's volleyball updates and my thoughts and all that stuff, you saw me seeing Craig Pizzanti and Dave Huber. I didn't get to see all of the Los Alamitos Huntington Beach match, but the first set is all I needed to see, and I think Los Alamitos and Huntington Beach are the league favorites. But I digress. Kahuku High School of Kahuku, Hawaii is participating in the Durango tournament. Kamehameha High School in Kiau, Hawaii is partaking in this. And then, actually, there are two Kamehamehas partaking in the Durango tournament. One in Honolulu and the other in Kiau, Hawaii. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry. Marymount High School is partaking from Los Angeles. Mater Dei High School is partaking from Santa Ana. Mercy Academy from Louisville, Kentucky is also partaking in Durango. Miracosta, another very good high school, which wound up winning the prestigious Ann Kang tournament. Redondo Union is another good high school that is partaking in this. Tommy Chaffins does an excellent job, and he's not afraid to partake in the Durango Fall Classic. St. Francis from Mountain View, last year's CIF Open Division Northern California champion, is partaking in this. I would not be surprised if they went deep into this tournament. Sierra Canyon of Chatsworth is partaking of this, and Sierra Canyon is the same Sierra Canyon that LeBron James' son went to. Just gotta throw that out there. Torrey Pines from San Diego is partaking in this tournament, and that's pretty much it in terms of notable teams. I know it was kind of California heavy. Xavier College Prep is one more team I guess I could throw in there. They're from Phoenix, Arizona, so I know I didn't get through all of the teams, but if I went through all of the teams, you all would probably be put to sleep. Even though most of y'all don't really like me covering high school volleyball. But I digress. Because I gotta touch down on all things volleyball, you know? Alright, but that's gonna do it for the Durango notable teams from this portion. I can't really preview because Durango hasn't really released their pools, but do keep an eye out for the Durango Fall Classic. It's probably going to be posted on Baller TV or Flow Volleyball, if I had to guess. But it is what it is. Alright, let's take ourselves a quick commercial break. When we come back, I got to discuss the First Point Challenge in NCAA men's volleyball. And then I got to preview Week 5 of the NCAA women's volleyball season. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans! It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Defining Moment, Sin City Sports, and Chi-Town Weekly. If I recall correctly, we have like 33 shows on IE Sports Radio, so you won't want to miss them. But Back with segment number 2, let us begin. So there was actually some interesting volleyball news that happened today. Earlier today, as the Grand Rapids Rise of the Pro Volleyball Federation has signed a new player. Now, I don't really make note of all the signings on the show that much, but this one kind of caught my eye, as it's actually Sarah Sponcil who is signed with the Grand Rapids Rise. Yes, that's the name of the team from Pro Volleyball Federation. So this is kind of interesting, because Sarah Sponcil is actually mainly a beach volleyball player. She was actually an indoor and beach volleyball standout at UCLA, and then she eventually became a AVP beach volleyball player. She and Therese Cannon are a very good dynamic duo, and it kind of made me wonder, why is she signing back in indoor when she has the AVP and whatnot, and she's made a name for herself in the AVP? So one of my followers, Nick Diunte, if I mispronounced that, I'm sorry, Nick Diunte, his Twitter handle is @ExaminedBaseball. Anyway, @ExaminedBaseball says, a lot of startup money for the Pro Volleyball Federation, combined with Sponcil falling out of the Olympic picture in beach volleyball, and the AVP floundering, makes this move less of a surprise. So I did not know the AVP was floundering. I do not know when their championships are, as I checked their website, and their only tournament remaining is the Laguna Beach Open, which, well, that kind of sucks. I don't like that. I hope they have a championships. Maybe they just can't find a location. Have it in Newport Beach. Or have it in Huntington Beach again. You'll draw a big crowd, I promise. And anyway, but yeah, I didn't know the AVP was floundering. Well, that sucks. I know they just can't get good TV deals, but honestly, it is what it is. I don't want to discuss too much of the AVP and what and why it's floundering, but Sarah Sponcil is a new member of the Grand Rapids Rise, and this is big because now Sarah Sponcil is back in NCAA women's volleyball, indoor volleyball. So quite fascinating to say the least. Alright, but that's that little bit of nugget news right there. So now let's jump on into the bigger news. So this was announced yesterday, as this was courtesy of the First Point Challenge on Twitter. I was basically informed that the First Point Collegiate Challenge, being held in Austin, Texas, has announced its teams that will be partaking in the Collegiate Challenge. And this is going to be fun times. This is going to be held in Austin, Texas during the Southwest Boys Classic, which starts on January 18th. So anyway, Creighton Volleyball, I don't know, says, thanks for the coverage, Teran. We are big fans of the show. Aw, well, thank you, Creighton Volleyball. That means a lot. You're making me blush a little. But anyway, the First Point Volleyball Federation Collegiate Challenge has announced its 6 teams. So the first team is none other than UCLA, which is the reigning national champion. The second team is Penn State, which was in the Collegiate Challenge last year. The third team is the Ohio State, which is a newcomer to this Collegiate Challenge. Fourth team is Stanford, which was in the challenge last year. Fifth team is Ball State, and then the sixth team is USC. So I imagine it's not going to be the MPSF teams facing one another. It's not going to be UCLA, Stanford, and USC facing one another. I'm going to say it's probably going to be UCLA playing Penn State, and then UCLA playing Ohio State, and then UCLA playing Ball State, and then Stanford playing Ball State, Penn State, and Ohio State, and then USC playing Penn State, Ohio State, and Ball State. So that's just how I'm looking at it, but it's a 2-day event, so I don't think that they're even going to cover that much ground, unless they want to do like 2 matches from 2 teams in one day. But now I'm getting extremely technical. So this is kind of big right there. First and foremost, you're getting the reigning national champion in John Speraw in UCLA, which it kind of makes sense that John Speraw is going to be partaking in this event, and his team is going to be partaking in this event. So for UCLA, that's big time right there because Johnsport is huge when it comes to the First Point Volleyball Foundation. I think he's the head honcho or one of the head honchos. He and Mick Haley have definitely poured a lot of heart and soul when it comes to this. So all in all for UCLA, this is going to be fun seeing them. And I don't know the full-on schedule, but again, it'll be released as time goes by. Mikey Two Guns says, do you think UCLA men's volleyball will repeat this year? Well, I will say this. They have a very good shot at repeating. They return a majority of their players from last year. The only player that's notable that they don't return is Alex Knight. But they have Merrick McHenry returning, Ethan Champlin returning, and Andrew Rowan, their freshman setter, who was phenomenal. He definitely returns. And then UCLA is going to get better as they just got Luca Curci, who was one of the top recruits from 2023. So, and also you got to remember that we've had like repeat champions we had Hawaii repeating as repeat champions. We had Long Beach back in 2022 and 21. We had Long Beach State repeating as champions in 2018 and 2019. We had Ohio State repeat champions from 2016 and 2017. And then I think UC Irvine was repeat champions in 2014 and 2015. So if that trend continues, UCLA will be repeat champions. So to answer Mikey Two Guns' question, most likely. I'm not going to try to crown him this early, but UCLA, if they stay healthy and they have all those players returning, we will be seeing them at the Pyramid in Long Beach State, in Long Beach, this upcoming May. I'm just saying. All right, but back to the First Point Foundation, the First Point Volleyball Foundation Collegiate Challenge. I'm just going to say this. I might be in Texas in December and January. Now, I will be in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, but I may want to, I'm going to try to make an effort to maybe, hence the word maybe, go to this event. If I can't be a member of the media and be at this event, I'll for sure try to at least be a spectator and go to this event. Just because, honestly, I would love nothing more to see the First Point Collegiate Challenge. I mean, you get to see UCLA and USC. Well, I get to see the USC, but I don't get to see Stanford a whole lot. I only get to see Ohio State and Penn State probably once, maybe twice a year if I'm lucky. And then and then for Ball State, I barely get to see them. So, and then I get to help grow the game of volleyball. And I'm sure this draws a huge crowd. So, in all honesty, I might, hence the word might, be at this event, but time will tell. But that's not until January. That's not going to be until next year when NCAA men's volleyball happens. And if I'm able to attend, cool, but if not, then I will be sad face. But I digress. Alright, but that is going to be enough for some NCAA men's volleyball talk. I was going to get into Pepperdine's news, but I don't want to get into all of their transfers. You probably saw it on the set_point.ie X account where I made note of Pepperdine's transfers and whatnot, so we'll see. Alright, but that is going to do it for that. Before we close out the show, we have to get into the Week 5 NCAA women's volleyball top matches to watch for. And I will just say this, we've got some good matchups happening. We've even got a few under-the-radar matches. So we'll start off on Wednesday. We have number 20 Houston playing number 10 BYU on ESPN2. Right out the gate, we are, for sure, we're getting a good matchup right here. And you got to remember, Houston is in the Big 10, or the Big 12, as well as BYU. So both these teams are going to be making their Big 12 debut on national TV. And Houston is not a bad team. They've got some stud players on their team, especially Kate Georgiadis, who is a freaking fantastic libero. If you remember from the NCAA tournament, she had an amazing diving diving save, which eventually wound up going viral, and heck, some were basically saying that she went Bill's Mafia on a table. So you can't discredit Houston. And they want to get back on their high horse in terms of getting back into that top 15 and whatnot. But playing at BYU is so tough. Playing at Smith Fieldhouse is a very uphill climb. And honestly, I won't be surprised if BYU wins, but I will say, don't sleep on Houston. Houston can definitely make noise in the Big 12. And it might be a little bit more wide open considering Texas. I don't know if Texas is the same Texas as last year. They're certainly not, because they don't have Logan Eggleston anymore and Zoe Fleck. It's now a whole different cast, and they still have Maddie Skinner and Asia O'Neal and Molly Phillips, and they just brought in Jenna Wenas. Emma Halter is doing solid at the libero position. But I will say, the Big 12 could be up for grabs, and BYU is playing some pretty darn good volleyball. And playing at Smith Fieldhouse is so tough. Because different altitude, and BYU has a lot of spirited fans. Also on Wednesday, we have a sneaky good matchup. USC at UCLA. Now, for USC, they did get their big win of the season last week, but they faced an improved UCLA team, which wound up losing to, ironically enough, a Big 12 school. Which I feel they could have won that one. This is the thing about UCLA. If they start slow, they could be in for a rough ride, because both of their losses have seen them start slow, dropping the first two sets, and then they take the next two sets, only to see them losing the fifth set. Which is unfortunate. But, hey, your two losses are only in 5 sets. One to LSU, which is a solid team, as well as Oklahoma, which I think Oklahoma is an okay team. I don't think they're world beaters in the Big 12, but I think they're solid. And that team has the Red River rivalry this weekend. But anyway, USC UCLA. This is always a great matchup. This is going to be played at Pauley Pavilion, unless said otherwise. And if that's the case, then I'll be sad. But I expect a big crowd from UCLA USC. It always is a great matchup when the Trojans and Bruins face one another, or the women of Troy and the Lady Bruins face one another. But I'm excited for this. I think for SC, they have some good confidence after going 2-0 against Illinois and Purdue. And again, Illinois is a solid team. They're not a bad team per se. I mean, they're not the Illinois of years past. And I think for SC, it was special that they won that, because they wanted a little revenge on, well, it's too late for revenge, but they wanted revenge on 2011, back when Mick Haley was the head coach. But I digress. But if we get Skylar Fields playing at a high level, London Woodjay playing at a high level, and everyone else doing their part to help out USC, then I think they could beat UCLA. But UCLA is stacked across the board. Like I said, like I've mentioned in past shows, they have Anna Dodson and Desiree Becker. They have Iman Njai, who stepped up after Charity Looper transferred. You also have Carly Hendrickson, who is solid. They could run a 6-2 offense with Audrey Pack and the freshman setter. It's something more. And then Peyton Dweck is a phenomenal libero. So, in all honesty, for UCLA, they're not going to make it easy on SC. I wouldn't be surprised if this one went 5. Book it right now. Thursday, we have another Pac-12 matchup. Washington at number 7 Washington State. Remember how Washington used to be big sister against Washington State? Man, how the tide has turned. As Washington State is now the new big sister to Washington. Washington did drop a tough 3-set loss to Pepperdine, while Washington State's only loss was to Louisville, which was a 3-set loss at Louisville, which is no shame. But for the Cougars, this is their chance to basically assert themselves. And this is the Apple Cup. This is another one of these rivalry matchups where you never know what you're going to get, and I would not be surprised if Washington made Washington State work for this. I can imagine Washington State will win, but just don't sleep on the Huskies. If you're thinking that Washington is going to be a pushover because they have a first-year head coach and they lost a majority of their roster from last year, I will just say you are dead wrong. I think Washington is just as solid of a team as the likes of UCLA, USC, and they're going to challenge the likes of Stanford, Oregon, and Washington State. And again, it's the Apple Cup. You never know what you're going to get when it comes to the Apple Cup. Even though the Apple Cup title doesn't really apply to this, but well. Then we have a good slate of matches on Friday. So Friday we have number 21 Ohio State at number 2 Nebraska. I wish Ohio State wasn't... Okay, this is not going to sound disrespectful. I wish Ohio State was a little bit better in terms of their record. Unfortunately, that is not the case, as Ohio State is kind of reeling. Meanwhile, Nebraska is undefeated, and they are hosting Ohio State at the Bob Devaney Center. I want to say this will be a good matchup, but they're going to need Emily Londot and Riley Rader to go off. I'm just saying, if they go as far as Emily Londot can take them. But we'll see what happens. I hope that Ohio State can give Nebraska a good matchup, but I just think Nebraska is just on a whole other level. But time will tell. Then on Friday as well, we have number 3 Florida at number 24 Auburn. I expect Florida to bounce back from that loss to Wisconsin. Florida probably had a little bit of a lengthy discussion. They all probably were still hurting, but this is nothing that they can't bounce back from. Yes, they might not have Alexis Stuckey due to that leg injury she suffered on Sunday, but I will say this, Kennedy Huff really proved herself when it came to that. When it came to her stepping in at the setter position in front of a bunch of 10,000 fans. She had to step in front of 10,000 fans, all looking at her, 10,000 plus fans, mind you, 10,000 plus fans looking at her, and she delivered. She did all that she could to try to help Florida avoid losing, but unfortunately Wisconsin is just that good of a team. So for Florida, I could see them bouncing back against Auburn. Auburn, again, they lost to mid-Tennessee. Do I really think Auburn has a shot? Maybe. I mean, Auburn won't be bad, but I just don't know. I think Florida is just on a whole other level. And I can only imagine what would have happened if Alexis Stuckey did not get hurt. And Florida is still having a great regular season regardless of this loss. They beat Stanford, they beat Minnesota, and they beat Penn State. I thought that Florida was going to be on a little bit of the rebuilding side, but look at them. They're top 5, top 3, and they almost took down number 1 Wisconsin at home. That would have been so incredible for them. But now they got to start a whole new streak, and they have to basically pick themselves up off the mat and show Auburn who runs the SEC and who pays the rent. Speaking of SEC, we have a sneaky good matchup here on Friday. LSU at number 22 Kentucky. Now, LSU, I kind of expected a little bit better from them. They haven't been really performing up to my standards. They did have the win over UCLA, which is good, but they haven't really been overly amazing. I expected a whole lot better from LSU, honestly. I thought LSU would be knocking on the door of that top 25 poll, but sadly that is not the case. They do have a chance to prove themselves against Kentucky as, again, Kentucky, while their record doesn't show it, they have been playing a lot of tough opponents. So it's Kentucky's time to basically take control of the ship and maybe, hence the word maybe, win the SEC. I don't know if it'll be happening because the SEC looks like they might have a new sheriff in town, a new outright sheriff in town in Florida. But Kentucky's going to they're going to need to get their you-know-what together. And the reason why I think this is a sneaky good matchup, because there is the possibility of I wouldn't say they're going to be looking ahead, just because I don't think teams are going to be looking ahead nowadays. But for Kentucky, they have another big matchup right there in Tennessee. They just can't overlook LSU. I think LSU is so underrated, and it doesn't really show in their record, but they have some talent on that team. But time will tell if they can take down Kentucky, or at least compete with Kentucky, because you got to remember, Kentucky has not really been the Kentucky we've seen from last year, or the Kentucky we expected. But there's still plenty of time because this is the time where SEC play really comes crucially, especially when you have teams like Tennessee and Arkansas on the rising up. And again, Florida is just having a phenomenal season. Auburn is basically proving themselves as a top 25 team. And then on Friday, we have number 23 Dayton at Loyola Chicago. This is another sneaky good matchup. And here's the thing. Y'all are probably wondering, why would you put an A10 matchup as a matchup to watch for? Well, Dayton is currently ranked, and Loyola of Chicago is the reigning A10 tournament champions. I imagine Dayton is going to want a little revenge after losing to Loyola of Chicago in the A10 championship match. These two teams actually play on Friday and on Saturday, so I really think this is going to be a solid matchup right here. And the fact that we get Dayton and Loyola of Chicago in this first weekend is really going to determine who can get a leg up on the other team, or all the other teams in the A10 for that matter, in the A10 conference. If Dayton wants to prove themselves as a ranked team, they got to take down Loyola of Chicago. Loyola of Chicago actually has some solid wins. As remember, they beat Purdue earlier on this season, and they also beat Duke, which was a pretty okay-ish win. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that Dayton-Loyola matchup. Then on Saturday, we have number 18 Baylor at number 10 BYU. Oh man, this is another big-time matchup for the Cougars, as they get two ranked matchups. Now, I don't know if this matchup is going to be on nationally televised. I highly doubt it. Otherwise, we would have seen a lot being noted of when it came to this matchup. But Baylor-BYU is going to be a fun little matchup, if you ask me. I really think that this team... I think Baylor has a lot to prove, especially since they did lose to SMU. Hence why Drewski was shaking his head at these Central Texas teams. So, for Baylor, I think they're kind of due for I would say big win, but they're kind of due for an extremely big win. Yes, they beat number 18 Rice, which is a solid win. And they also beat Ohio State, barely. But BYU is going to be a big-time matchup. And I think this matchup is going to be on ESPN+, which I wish it was kind of on like ESPN 2 or 3. But you also got to remember there's college football happening on Saturday. So, also Baylor plays Stephen F. Austin. As of this recording, they play them on Tuesday in Waco, Texas at the Farrell Center. So, you got to make note of that as well. Even though it's not really a notable matchup, but I digress. Then on Sunday, we have, in my opinion, the kind of match of the week. I have two matches of the week, and you could debate this. Number 12, Minnesota at number 2, Nebraska. Now, Minnesota, I am very disappointed in after they lost to... Okay, I went after they lost to Creighton. I'll give Creighton the credit and their flowers. They legit earned that win. It's nowhere near easy to beat Minnesota at Minnesota. But Minnesota has kind of been a little meh this start to the season. They do have the win over Oregon, which is a solid win, but they don't really have the greatest... They haven't really been eye-popping to me, in my honest opinion. Now, do I think Minnesota's bad? Of course not. I think Minnesota is a solid team. But now they got to go at the Bob, a.k.a. the Bob Devaney Center, to take on Nebraska, which Nebraska is playing some dang good volleyball. I would not be surprised if Nebraska won, but if Minnesota wants to win, they need to have Taylor Landfair have herself a monster game. And they have to have at least another player in double digits in kills. Otherwise, Nebraska's defense is going to eat them alive. The block is going to be there. Lexi Rodriguez is basically going to be digging everything. And Harper Murray has been one of the most phenomenal freshmen I've seen this season. And then you also have to remember that Merritt Beeson has also been amazing for Nebraska ever since she transferred from Florida. So I'll say this about Nebraska. They're going to give Minnesota a tough time. But I hope it's going to be a barn burner. I hope it at least goes 4. If Nebraska sweeps, then I will be baffled at that. But that is going to do it for that matchup. Next matchup we have is number 6 Oregon at UCLA. Now, UCLA is not the UCLA from years past. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I will say this about UCLA. I would not be surprised if they pulled one upset in the Pac-12. I would not be surprised if they beat Washington State or Stanford or Oregon. If there's ever a time for UCLA to get back in that top 25 and shake things up in the Pac-12, this would be the week. Obviously, they have USC, which I think that one is a pick-em. But the Oregon one, that's where they really have to prove themselves. I really think that UCLA under Alfie Reft has done an outstanding job. And like I said, UCLA has so much talent on that team. This is a win-now team for UCLA. That is the words that I could describe UCLA. Win now. I mean, they've got a good future in terms of their recruiting classes. But I will also say this is their time to shine in terms of winning because Anna Dodson and Desiree Becker are basically done after this season. This is their final year of eligibility. And then they also have Carly Hendrickson, who's phenomenal. Iman Njai, she's done an outstanding job. So all in all for UCLA, I think I would not be surprised if they challenged Oregon. And for UCLA, they don't have much to lose. For Oregon, I would say they have a lot to lose. But if they lose this one, I don't think they stay in the top 10. Yes, their body of work is phenomenal. They have that really good win over Pitt. They had that great first week. Yes, they do have the loss to Minnesota, but nothing too out of the extraordinary. That loss to Minnesota isn't terrible, but it wasn't what I expected from Oregon, even though it was in 5 sets. So that's that matchup right there. And then the last matchup for Week 5 to watch for is number 14 Tennessee at number 22 Kentucky. This one's going to be on ESPN, and it actually got flexed from ESPN2 to ESPN, which is absolutely amazing. I think the viewership from all the other past NCAA women's volleyball matches has really boosted it, which I think is great stuff, and I'm very happy about that. And this is kind of my co-match of the week with Minnesota-Nebraska, just because it's a rivalry matchup. Tennessee-Kentucky is a great rivalry matchup. However, Kentucky has kind of dominated this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky won, but if Tennessee does win, I will be downright impressed. I think Kentucky, for this week, this is where you have to prove themselves. You have to really prove yourselves as one of the favorites to win the SEC. Because if you remember in the SEC coaches poll, Kentucky was chosen to finish first in the SEC. They're not looking so great because you've got Florida that is sizzling hot, even though they might have a different setter, and they just lost to Wisconsin, number 1 Wisconsin at that. You also have Tennessee, who is on the rise. I thought Tennessee rising was just because every other team was losing. But they are the real deal. And Arkansas is legit. Auburn is kind of under the radar, even though I didn't really like that mid-Tennessee loss. So for Kentucky, the SEC is no longer a cakewalk. This is now you have to actually go out and beat your opponent. There's not going to be one easy match in SEC play. Maybe one of the little handfuls, but I wouldn't even be surprised if a team like Alabama or South Carolina tripped them up. Maybe Missouri, because Dawn Stanley has done an outstanding job, even though Missouri isn't really flying on anyone's radar. But you have to remember that Missouri lost a whole bunch of players to the transfer portal, and they have a new head coach. And thankfully, with Dawn Stanley, they have a good chance at maybe making the NCAA tournament, or at least getting some sort of relevancy. But all in all, for Tennessee, Kentucky, it really sucks that I have to work. I really wish I didn't have to work. Otherwise, I would totally watch this matchup. I want to say this is a noon Pacific time match, which if that's the case, then unfortunately that is not going to be happening, which makes me sad. But I will also say this about Tennessee, Kentucky. I think it's going to be a great matchup. Tennessee is going to really want to prove themselves, and they're playing on the road. If they can win on the road against Kentucky, they will have solidified their legitimacy. And speaking of the SEC, before I continue on with that, Florida-Wisconsin matchup garnered 10,323 fans in attendance, which is actually a program attendance record. So, great job to those that were in Gainesville. So, hats off to them. But back to Tennessee, Kentucky. I will say this about Tennessee, Kentucky. This has to be the matchup where Kentucky rises to the occasion. If they lose this one, I don't know what to say about their SEC hopes. I know it's early, and I don't want to judge, but if they somehow lose to LSU or Tennessee, then winning the entire SEC is going to be a whole lot tougher, especially when Florida is still a thing. And if they get Alexis Stuckey back sooner rather than later, oh baby. That's going to be tough right there altogether, so we'll see. But all in all, for Kentucky, I hope that they can get the job done. I expect them to win that one, but time will tell. But that is pretty much going to do it for all of the top matches to watch for in Week 5 of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Week. Before I end this off, I do got to say I will be at Long Beach State for Long Beach State UC Santa Barbara, and I also plan to be at UC Irvine for the UC Irvine-UC Davis match, which Big West Conference is going to be a barn burner. I'm just going to also say that right there. I think the Big West is going to be wide open, and especially that Big West Conference tournament. The top 6 teams get in, and while Hawaii is still my favorite to win that tournament, don't sleep on Santa Barbara. That team is having a quiet but deadly good year. Yes, they did lose to Drake, but their only other loss was to Oregon, which there's no shame in losing to that. So I think for Santa Barbara, and Daniel Gilman alluded this when he was a guest on my show, I think Santa Barbara can really make noise. Long Beach State, I obviously know how I feel about them. Cal Poly, I think they could do well. And this is kind of the big barometer of their Big West Conference opener. They open up at Long Beach State. If they can win at Long Beach State, they put Long Beach State in a tough situation because they have struggled to beat Cal Poly at Cal Poly. And don't be surprised if for some weird reason Cal Poly manages to sweep the series in the regular season. And then Davis was picked to finish 5th in the Big West Conference. I wouldn't be surprised if Davis wins against UC Irvine, but UC Irvine does have a scrappy team, and I like their libero, Campbell Jensen. She is a beast of a libero, so do not sleep on UC Irvine. I wouldn't say don't sleep on them, but I wouldn't say ultimately expect them to win 2 matches. They play UC Riverside on Friday. They get both their matches at home, which is good. But I will also say, I hope for UC Irvine's sake that they could turn it around. They certainly don't have the team from last year when they had Joy Ume and Oniofobu. So now it's a whole different cast and whatnot. So we shall see when it comes to UC Irvine. I'm not going to try to say count out UC Irvine, but I will say this. They're not the team that they were last year. I think it's going to be close for them making that top 6 cut. Because if they don't, then they're basically going to be sitting at home. So before I end this off for real, I do got to give a shout out to Nebraska Stanford. They garnered, can we get a drum roll please? 466,000 viewers when it came to the Nebraska Stanford match. That was the most watched regular season volleyball match on record for ESPN platforms. So, amazing job to those that were basically watching this. I got to see a little of it, but I had to cover my former Set Point guest, Craig Pizzanti, and Huntington Beach High School girls volleyball in their matchup against Santa Margarita. And I also made a little bit of connections when it came to that team as well and their head coach. So, yeah. But on that note, that's going to do it for this week of Set Point. And I hate to do this one more time, but one last thing is, I don't know when Set Point is going to be going live next week. It might be going live on Monday, but it also might be going live on Saturday, because not this Saturday, but the following Saturday is the 4-year anniversary of Set Point. So I might go live, because September 30th was when I first went live with Set Point. And oh man, you're gonna love to hear the crappy quality that I had back then. But time will tell when it comes to the next episode of Set Point. It might be on Saturday, it might be on Monday, time will tell. But that's gonna do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Let's drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really do appreciate you. Shout out to the chat room, Larry B, Marcus Los Great, Mike with Two Guns, It's Drewski, and, I forgot to mention, Mike Pat was in the chat room. He said, time for the best volleyball podcast on the internet. Thanks, Mike. And also Adam Clark popped in, as well as Carson. And lastly, thank you to Creighton VB for popping into the chat room. It really means a lot. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the volleyball action this week. Conference play has begun. This is where it gets really, really real, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all on Friday, well, maybe on Friday for Long Beach State Cal Poly. For sure, Long Beach State Santa Barbara, and most likely UC Irvine, UC Davis, unless I get disallowed. But until then, have yourself a great week. Enjoy the volleyball action, and I'll see you later this week for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, most likely. Peace!